Please no. Please no. I'm tired enough, and yeah. 1 Samuel. We're in chapter 20. We're still following along this dude named Saul, who's got an issue with a young man, right? And we've been looking at Saul here for a while, and now start looking at the interplay, because now we're starting to get Joshua, that was from this morning, Jonathan in there, and I swear I'm going to say Paul here in a minute, but that's okay. We all know I'm talking about Saul. Paul wrote the New Testament. Got it? All right. And yeah, just you'll have to do some interpretation for me anyhow. Now notice up to this point, when we raised this last time, you would think eventually David would say, that's it, and institute the Texas defense, Your Honor, the man needed killing. And I guess here that's a rule. Not so much in this time of the world. So we pick up here in chapter 20. We've also seen that Saul pursued David to where Samuel was. And as he got there, we saw last week, he sent people and they ended up prophesying. And the end result was they didn't kill David. And so he sent more people and they didn't kill David. And undaunted, he what? Now he sent one more group of people. He sent 3 groups of people, because as we all know, that when it's time to do something, if we redouble our efforts, it will always work, right? And then we say the greatest thing ever, if I wanted something done right, I do it myself. So he goes. Probably should have stayed at home, because he strips naked and then lays down on the ground and begins to prophesy, which means he doesn't do what? He doesn't kill David. And so we pick up in verse 20, because Saul is prophesying in both day and night. So David fled from Naioth of Ramah and came and said, said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life? And he said to him, far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing, either great or small, without disclosing it to me. Notice Jonathan didn't answer the question. Do you kind of notice that? It's kind of like going, does this car run? Let me show you the tires. How about the start? Well, let me show you the trunk. I'm not buying the trunk. I'm buying a car that runs. Well, let's keep going. And why should my father hide this from me? Is it not so? But David vowed again, saying, your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes. And he thinks, do not let Jonathan know, lest he will be grieved. But truly, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. What's David saying here? Your dad knows that we are not related brothers, but we are now brothers. And your dad seeks to kill me, and why would your dad tell me? Now, have you ever had a relationship where you kind of come in and one side is saying, look, this guy's out to get me. This guy's out to destroy me. And you go, oh no, I know the guy. He's not like that. To you. Right? Serial killers don't hunt everybody they see, just the ones they hunt. This is common in abusive relationships. I used to see this all the time. I used to sit there, I'd be dealing with a spouse, and sometimes actually a male soldier. And that one's always a little bit harder, because nobody really wants to believe the male soldier can be abused, but anyhow. And the abuse comes in and says, this person is beating on me, this person is hurting me, this person is doing this. And then you go and you meet the abuser, and they're so nice and charming. And then people say some of the dumbest stuff here. And please don't ever say this to somebody. Well, if he's hurting you, why do you stay? They stay because the person has told them, I will kill you if you leave. And they've beaten you enough to know. David and Jonathan are kind of in this weird kind of relationship. Jonathan's like, oh, look, I know my dad. My dad's a good guy. Mom, no, he's not. And you know it deep down. Because earlier, Jonathan had to warn David, right? My dad, he doesn't hide these things from me. I promise he doesn't. And David's like, look, what have I done to harm this man? What is my crime against him? Have I done anything that would subvert his command? No. As a matter of fact, everything that I have done as a soldier, I have done to expand his kingdom. I killed Goliath while you hid in your tent. I killed 10,000 Philistines while you killed only 1,000. And he could say all these things and puff himself up. But notice David never ever writes his resume out there for everybody. Every time he goes into the battle, he strikes down the Philistines with such ferocity that they run away. And Israel's hand is strengthened. And notice, every time Saul goes to attack him, what happens? David grows in strength in favor of the people and of the Lord. Same terminology, same language that happens with Samuel, but Saul gets afraid. What's my crime against this man? And the fact is, the answer is the only crime that you have, and Saul isn't aware of it yet, is that you were king and that you've upstaged the king. David has killed his tens of thousands while Saul has killed his thousands. Every time Saul sees David, that song runs through. Have you ever had somebody like that that's kind of upstaged you and done it? And they're not bad people. I've gotten used to being upstaged, so, it comes easy. And then when you look at somebody that's really, really good, you're like going, man, you start replaying all those things and you start seeing it. That's kind of what's going on. Then Jonathan said to David, verse 4, whatever you say, I will do. And David said to Jonathan, behold, tomorrow. So because here's the thing. David knows Saul. Get a couple of spears chunked at you, you kind of get to know the person, right? One, stay out of range of his spears. Although I think he's safe. It's kind of like when I was in basic training. I realized that if I stood perfectly still in front of the soldier with the weapon, that I was safe. I actually watched one soldier shoot her friend's target. Which is kind of interesting because her target's right in front of her and her friend's target is over there at that door. It does happen all the time in basic training land, and the safest place to stand is in front of them. That was free. That was there. Whatever you say, I will do. So David says here, I'll hatch this scheme, and you will know because your father's not going to tell you, so I'm going to come up with this scheme to where you will know without a shadow of doubt. We kind of do this, right? We kind of hatch our little plans and go, no, don't let it come back to me, right? Anybody ever say that? No. Please, for God's sake, don't raise your hand. That's why I took my glasses off. One day I will go down that rabbit trail and I'll just leave it, bang. Tomorrow is the new moon. And I should not fail to sit at the table of the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field till the third day at the evening. And if your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the clan. And if he says, good, it will be well with your servant. But if he is angry, then you will know that harm is determined by him. David's charge to Jonathan is, your dad's going to keep his plans from you now. No. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Here's going to be a little test. Right? Let me go. If your dad misses me and you tell him that he went home to visit mom and dad and do the offering sacrifice, he goes, well, that's good. Then we know everything's okay. But if he gets enraged, then you know the intent of his heart. We kind of see that with folks these days, right? Have you ever noticed folks that are like, oh, hey, how are you? Stab you in the eye. Bye-bye. Come back, never. Right? It's kind of like when you see, I remember back when you had Ronald Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev get together, and they were always smiling, and you knew both of them like, oh man, I don't want a picture with it. It's kind of like today. I don't think things really change between political, or you see the head of the Republican House sitting next to the folks from the Democratic House, and they're all smiling and looking at each other. You're like, you guys would stab each other in the throat if the camera wasn't on, wouldn't you? Kind of the same thing here. This is the way we're going to do this test. That way you'll know, and your Father's words will condemn him to you without you having to confront him. I lost my place. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. But if there is guilt in me, kill me yourself, for why should you bring me to your father? Strong words. Let me go. Run this test. But if I'm guilty, if I've committed a crime against your father, as the king's son, as a member of the royal court, you have the authority to take my life as it stands right now. If I've done something to harm your father, take my life. If not, let me go and see this play out. This sounds like a bad Shakespearean play at times. And here's the thing, this actually occurs in real life. And what happens? Are we disappointed with Saul, or is Jonathan disappointed with his dad? If you've been reading this story, you know full well Jonathan is going to be thoroughly disappointed with his father. Why? Because the dad's problem is that he's being tormented by an evil spirit that every time he sees David, he sees in rage and anger. Why? Jealousy and anger. I'm the king, and this young upstart has outdone me. Jonathan said, far be it for you, if I knew that it was determined by my father the harm should come to you, I will not what was saying? Let me read that again. If I knew that it was determined by my father that harm should come to you, would I not tell you? That made much more sense. Then David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers you roughly? And Jonathan said to David, come, let us go out to the field. So they both went out to the field, and Jonathan said to David, the Lord of God of Israel be witness, when I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow on the third day, behold, if he does well, if he is well disposed towards David, shall I not send and disclose it to you? But should it please my father to harm you, the Lord do so to Jonathan, and more also, if I do not disclose it to you and send you away, that you may go in safety. May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, now this isn't telling, right? If I am still alive, show me steadfast love of the Lord, that I may not die, and do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever. Now this is going to come back later on. The story of Mephibosheth, where David goes and seeks out Jonathan's heirs, and as customary, when a new king ascends the throne and takes out the old king's, he takes out the old king's family, not out to eat. It's like a bad mafia movie. He takes them out. Why? Because you can't have a rival from another house ascending the throne. That I may not when the Lord cuts off everyone from the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, my Lord, take vengeance on David's enemies. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Again, people will try to take that verse and make some type of homosexual reference. It's not the case. So here's the plot. Here's the plan. You're going to tell your dad this story. then you're going to tell me so that I can escape. And then Jonathan, I think, realizes, oh, what happens if my dad plans to kill David and I tell David? I'm going to die. You have this nice little interplay here within the text where you have Jonathan and David now realizing that they are serving probably a bit of an individual that's a little bit on the nutty side. Is it not true? And one of the things that Jonathan asks is that he will take care of his family. And this statement does not play out for a while, but will certainly play out further down the road. Why? Because Jonathan loved David as he would his own soul. So Jonathan's concern, while trying to be an ally to his dad, while trying to be a faithful son to his dad, while trying to be a good son to his dad, also realized his dad's a nut job. His dad has tried to kill David 3 times with a spear, tried to send him out in the battle numerous times, and Jonathan's had to intercede for him once already. And Jonathan will intercede for him a couple more times. Let's keep looking. Then Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is the new moon. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. On the 3rd day, go quickly down to the place where you hid yourself when the matter was at hand and remained behind a stone heap. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I shot at a mark. Behold, I will send a boy saying, go find the arrows. And if I say to the boy, look for the arrows on this side of you, take them, then you are to come for the Lord, for as the Lord lives, it is safe for you to be here, and there is no danger. But if I say to the youth, look for the arrows beyond you, then go. For the Lord has sent you away, and as a matter of which you and I have spoken, behold, the Lord is between you and me forever. Anyone care to guess how this story ends? Many of you have probably heard this story in Bible school and someplace else. These guys come up with some cool plans. Hey, you know what? Here's an idea. This sounds like an episode of 24. Here's an idea. I'll go out of town and I'll leave my space vacant. And if your dad gets upset with me, now why? Because David's requirement is to be at this table for this feast. If I'm gone, you tell your dad, I went home to see my family. If he goes, oh, okay, no problem. Great, I'll come back. But if he gets angry, he plans to kill me. And Jonathan's response is, well, here's the thing. Go hide behind some rocks. Now, here's an idea that I don't think the safety coordinator at Fort Hood would sign off on. You go hide behind these rocks, and I'll shoot 3 arrows at them. And I'll send a boy out to get them. If I say, no, come closer, they're there, you're safe, come in the back, everything's good. But if I say to the boy, go beyond the rocks, then we know the gig is up. This is essentially the story. So David hid himself in the field, and the new moon came, and the king sat down to eat the food, and the king sat on his seat as at other times, and on his seat on the wall, by the wall, and Jonathan sat opposite him, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Yet Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought, something has happened to him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. This doesn't mean David didn't shower. David is defiled for some reason, so he can't come and eat with them. And so Saul is thinking, well, maybe he's defiled himself. Although, if you go back and look at all the problems of being defiled, is there a cleansing method that takes only 1 day? No. 7-day ritual. So you got an issue there. But on the 2nd day after the new moon, David's place was empty, and Saul said to Jonathan his son, why has not the son of Jesse come to our meal? I knew I was in trouble as a young man, or a young boy, when I heard Ashley Todd. Then I knew I was beyond being in trouble when I heard Ashley Todd Payne. Have you ever noticed when people use your title or use something other than your actual name, that there's usually a bit of a seething involved? Because that's usually what happened when they came there. You know, it was never, "Oh, Ashley Todd Payne, I see that you've done something wrong." No, usually there was a lot of yelling when my name came out. And so you have this request, why has the son of Jesse come out to meal either yesterday or today? Jonathan answers, "David earnestly asked Lee to go to Bethlehem. And he said, 'Let me go, for our clan holds a sacrifice in the city, and my brothers have commanded me to be there.' So now if you have found favor in your eyes, let me get away and see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table." And Saul was tickled pink. He was so happy, he sent chocolates and... No, it's not in my text either. Then Saul's anger was kindled against whom? Jonathan. Which is why Jonathan suspects his dad might kill him. Hey, if something were to happen to me on this, again, a bad episode of 24, if something were to happen to me on this, take care of my family. Get them out of the city. Here's $50 million. I'm going to give them a new name. Here's some passports. Da, da, da. Gotta love this loving father-son interplay relationship here. I mean, it's the things... I had to apologize to Kimmy this morning because I thought that Mama said that she had used my keys that had my truck keys on it that also has a door key on it to open the door for the dogs to get out in the backyard. And I couldn't find them. And I told Kimmy, I says, "Listen here, little girl." See the title thing? By the time Daddy gets home, my keys are found. I said, "But if you're watching TV when I get home and my keys aren't found, I'm going to spank you." And so she was all upset. And then, come to find out, I was wrong. My keys, I went to the store yesterday, and I left my keys in a hoodie. So right after deacon prayer, I called up, and I had to apologize to a 7-year-old over a phone who was terrified that Daddy was going to come home and whip her. And she said, her response was a very gracious, "That's okay, Daddy, I understand." Which is nice. But if you look at this interplay, sometimes we say things we don't intend to say. Saul intends to say this. Saul is not speaking out of the heat of the moment. Saul does not love anyone but whom? Saul. "You, son of a perverse and rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you nor I kingdom shall be established. Therefore, send and bring him to me, for he shall die. Do you not know that this man is a usurper? Do you not know that this individual is going to take the throne from him?" Now, how do we know this? This goes all the way back to 1 Samuel 15, when Samuel looks at him and says, "Your line is done, and your son will not sit on the throne." Somehow Saul has either found out, because I have not seen in the text where someone goes, "Hey, Saul, guess what? David's the new king. What do you think about that?" Could be that when he prophesied, this is one of the things that he prophesied about. This young man, the reason why I have such hatred for him is because I know he will replace me. And I desire to kill him. You get the same kind of questions David asked. Jonathan answered Saul, why should he be put to death, and what has he done? Saul loves his spear.
Too bad he's not accurate.
Too bad he's not accurate. Maybe he should drink less and throw more. I don't know. I mean, when you're this bad of a shot, you go back to remedial training. Right? Saul can't qualify with a spear. But Saul hurled a spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan... I giggle every time I hear this. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Thank you for bringing that point. I think now I know my dad plans to kill David because he tried to kill me at the same time. Why? Saul understands what this boy's job is, and that's to take the throne away from him. And the thing is, whose fault is it again? Saul's. It's Saul's fault. Can Saul see that it's his fault? No. Have you ever been so angry at a situation that you cannot see that it's by your own implication that you're in the situation? And usually the best course of advice is when you're deep in the hole, stop digging. Saul's lost the kingdom not because David was anointed king. Saul lost the kingdom not because David was a threat. Saul lost the kingdom because on numerous occasions he disobeyed the will of God, and God finally said, that's it, you're done. You don't take the place of the prophet and step in his place and make the sacrifice when I say it's him to do it. You don't spare the lives of kings and animals and livestock when I say wipe them utterly from the face of the earth. You don't have the lack of moral conscience and tell the people, even though the animal's cute and it would be great for farming, we're going to kill everything here. Saul is in this place because of him, but who does Saul blame? He blames everybody around him. David's going to supplant the throne, and you're aiding him. No, Saul, you caused us to lose the throne. Your actions put us in this situation. Have you ever watched when somebody gets caught in something like this? Usually they blame everybody around them for why their world fell apart. And I see this in counseling all the time. Well, if this person would have just loved me more, or my brother-in-law is an excellent case study in this. Everybody from everybody is responsible for his behavior. If my dad would have loved me more, my dad would have blessed me when I was this age. If my mom hadn't just been so controlling, if my sister would just understand his situation, if I hadn't been a jerk and told him that he was an abusive individual, if it's always everyone else's fault for why their world implodes. Because they cannot see from their own position that the person blowing their toes off is them. And then they reload. And then they start going after the nubs that are left. What we see from Saul is a life that is so wrapped up in self and in self-pity and in self-loathing that he despises this boy and now despises his own son. This will eventually lead to his absolute downfall and, sadly, to the death of his own son, Jonathan. But there's more still to be unplanned. You would figure by this time that this would end, but you got to see the total destruction that comes along with it. And what caused it? Pride. I can step into the place of the prophet. I'll make up an excuse. I was compelled to. I didn't want to do it, but I was compelled to. Lack of leadership. The people were fleeing, so I did it. Lack of following God's command. I killed everybody there except the king and except all the good livestock. But I killed everybody else, so I killed everybody. This boy plans to supplant me. Why? Because he has killed his tens of thousands, and I've only killed 1,000. Pride, jealousy, self-loathing, and inability to take responsibility for his actions. This is what you see with Saul. Conversely, though, and we'll wrap this up because it's almost, Mickey's hand's almost on the 7. Notice David's response. David's response is not, hey, Jonathan, let's set this little trap. If your dad tries to pin you to the wall, give me a little nod and I'll shoot him from the balcony with a high-power sniper rifle and no one will know. Bang, 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 we're done. We're eating chow tonight. David's response is not, hey, once you shoot those 3 arrows, let me know. I'll grab them and shoot them, and then no one will know because both our fingerprints are on there, and we could just look and it'll be a hung jury. Got to quit watching Snap because that keeps coming into mind. Have y'all seen it yet? I know Delight and I, we finally connected. She saw The Godfather the other day. Years ago. But she at least knows that my feeble attempt at being Vito Corleone, she at least can figure that one out. That's good. That's good. Now you just got to watch that Hobbit stuff. David's response is not, well, let's get Saul somewhere and we go pow and take care of our problem. Notice David's response is always to move away from Saul. And even when David has the opportunity, as we will see, to kill Saul, he doesn't. Not because he's weak, not because he's a failed leader, but because he recognizes that while he is still the king, he is God's anointed man, corrupt leader or not. David's response is how we should respond when we realize that we work for an individual that's a corrupt leader. Why? Because it's not that I respect the man, but I respect the position that you hold. He's still the king. He was anointed king. God made him king. And when God decides to kill him, he'll cease being king. And he will kill him. And this is he killed Eli, and he killed Hophni and Phinehas. He will kill this man, and he will kill his son to where he cannot ascend the throne. David's response is, I'll bear through it because I know that God has a greater plan, even though in all this mess and all this Greek tragedy that's played out in Hebrew, this train wreck that you have here between Saul and David, you still see David being loyal to Saul in spite of Saul trying to pin him to the wall like a pincushion. How do you react and how do you behave when you have folks that are actively out to get you? How does David act and behave when there are people out to actively get? Because here's the thing. I seriously doubt that even in your greatest confrontation with somebody at work, they have yet to grab a spear and try to pin you to the wall. But see, what do we do in our culture? We go straight to guns. I'm very easy to do that. It's one of those things that's a carryover from being in the Army. It's, well, hey, I don't have to tolerate this. Guess what? Move out and draw fire. It's usually where my captain's bars were. So, you know. Well, sir, I don't really like what you're doing. Oh. Yeah, okay. So, how do you respond? A lot of time our cultures say, hey, this guy's disrespectful. We can be disrespectful. A lot of times our culture says, hey, this guy's out to get you. You can be out to get him. It's all good. It's all fair in love and war. But notice what David does. In spite of every attempt to kill him, and now the attempt to kill Jonathan, David's response is not team up with Jonathan and we take the throne and run with it. His response is to rely upon God and wait upon what God has for him in the future. Why? Because is David going to be king? Sure as little birds fly from Capistrani. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for the example that we have in David, who shows us just how to work in a toxic work relationship. To respect a man who is not respectable. To serve a man who's not deserving of being served. To wait patiently upon you to remove the issue so that he can become king. Heavenly Father, so often we love to go straight to guns and just blow the target away and just keep moving. Unfortunately, though, a lot of times you put obstacles in our way to prepare us for the things in the future. We ask that you would be with us as when we encounter situations of obstacles like this. Our first response isn't, well, you've hurt me, I will now hurt you. It's hard for me, it's hard for everyone else, I'm sure. We ask for your strength and your wisdom in dealing with these situations. We actually say in your name we pray. Amen. Mickey Sand is on the 7.